Can you tell me a little bit about the company, the drone company, like what services it has?
We started going to these different locations. I couldn't understand how we were allowing these families to live in areas that were not, road accessible. Mm-hmm. What happens if we do get hit with a typhoon and all the roads are closed?
Right.
And so the drone technology was really coming about. And we started to see ways to be able to implement that throughout the region. So we created a company. We said, we want to be able to create a network of deliveries to be able to bring goods to areas that don't have the ability to receive goods. Yeah.
Alfred Guam and beyond. This is Dr. Nguyen, the Longevity Doc. So I am here with Charlie Hermosa. So he started his career as a logistics officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he worked up to becoming a general manager for the shipping industry giant, APL, and moved on to become a chief executive officer and co-founder of Bella Wings Aviation, which is a drone technology company. And he's also the adjunct professor in supply chain management and entrepreneurship at UOG. And most recently, he has announced a potential run for the 2026 governor of Guam under the Republican Party. So welcome to the podcast, the Nugent Peak Performance Podcast.
Good afternoon. Good having a half a day. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you for taking out the time. And, I just listed, a very accomplished resume. It's still just a synopsis. There's a lot more when I looked on your LinkedIn, and I'm sure there's much more than that. But just looking at that, just even the synopsis was, I felt, very accomplished. But, I really want to boil it down to really get to know the essence. Someone's resume you can tell a lot about someone's resume, person or character based on the resume, but kind of want to boil it down to what the essence or the driving factor for Mr. Charlie Hermosa. So I wanted to start off with, what is your ikigai, or what would you define as your purpose?
That's always a good question, right? What is your purpose? And I think that is always going to be continued to be defined, right? Because I think every time you hear, you reach a level in your life, for example, when you become a parent, right? That just becomes a whole different world. So when I think back, I was actually born and raised in Queens, New York, right? So I grew up in the city. And one of the things that I would say that really gravitated was sort of the community environment, because back in the day, we didn't have the technology of being able to have an iPad, iPhone, stay at home, play video games. So, what we did, what everybody I'm sure did here as well, and what I hear that everybody did was go out and play, right? Yep. Go out in the street, go out with your bikes. And so, those long-lasting relationships is what I feel has kept me very grounded. And these relationships are ever growing. And so one of the things that I've been fortunate to be part of is a community environment where you're able to share your experiences. So growing up, I've had certain experiences. High school, I've had certain experiences. Moving on to military school, which I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, which is a completely different animal in itself, because it was a unique way to see the world. So you actually go to school for 3 years, and you travel for 1 year. And so at the age of 18, 19, I was traveling around the world, going to Europe, going to the Far East, traveling, going to Hawaii, things that normal kids growing up in New York probably would not have had the opportunity to do so. So I was very fortunate. And then again, those relationships allowed me to take the next step, which was my next endeavor was in the United States Marine Corps. And I will tell you, and I'm very open about my thought process when it comes to the Marines, and it's one of the things that I've always told my Marines, and I've told them, said, listen, if you wanted to see the world, you would join the Navy. You should have joined the Navy. If you want to get a tech education, you should have went to the Air Force. If you want some type of business-minded, innovative, go to the Army. If you ever wanted to have the opportunity to go into battle, into war, you joined the Marine Corps. And that's why I joined the Marine Corps. I honestly, once you become a Marine and you go through that training, I think that you sort of build the ethos of being able to work as a team and one day have the opportunity to go into battle. So that sets the tone for, I would say, my life, because the Marine Corps really shaped me to who I am today. not taken away from my family at all, because my family has always been there next to me for everything that I've done. So I really give everything to my mom and dad for everything that they did. Blue collar workers, giving me the opportunity to be able to be in the position that I am now. But when I look at the Marine Corps and the person that I am, I would say the Marine Corps has really shaped me to be what I am today and what I'm going to be until the day that I die.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said kind of blue collar worker, and like, was there some upbringing that felt you to be more of an overachiever and just kind of really go up the ranks? And because GM is a big position, I mean, that's the numero uno of the leadership, chain. And, was there anything in your childhood, or was it really the Marine Corps that kind of pushed you to be a leader?
That's interesting, because I will tell you that I think a lot of it has to do, again, going back to the way I was brought up. Mm-hmm. And I think my parents always instilled in me the fact that we always wanted to do the best that we can at everything that we did. And so, I've had many baseball games where I struggled, not being able to hit the ball. And my mom would be the one that would be yelling at me from the stands, like, what's going on? You got to hit the ball. And I think that was not so much of a driver, but I felt that the attention was there for me to always make sure that I did something more than it was done before. And so I think that growing up with my friends, playing sports was a huge driver from a team perspective. I saw myself as a leader back then because of certain sports that I did well in. And I felt that that sort of gravitated more into high school, into college, playing football through high school, through college, and then on to the Marine Corps. And then obviously the ethos and the leadership perspective that you get from the Marine Corps. It's not only from an officer perspective, but we teach all our Marines to be leaders, because each one of them is going to be sort of a supervisor or manager of a four-man team. Mm-hmm. And so at 18, 19, 20 years old, you're in charge of 4 Marines. At 21, you can be in charge of 21 Marines. And so that discipline was very important. And I think that is one of the things that I carry on. And so when I look at the positions that I am, I'm always sort of striving to look at ways that I can use what I've learned, that I feel inherently that I've learned throughout my life, in ways that I can give back to society, to the community. And so if you look at from the business perspective, I've always been given the opportunity to be in positions of leadership, and I've actually asked for them. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was 27 years old, and the first company that I worked for, I was managing developer of the Port Authority in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I moved to Puerto Rico, and then from there, I was given the opportunity by a logistics company, and the CEO had asked me, they're like, "So what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to run the company." And so he laughed, and he said, "No, seriously, what do you want to do?" And I said, I said, "The only way that I will join this organization is if you give me full authority to be able to run it." And he said, "You got it." And so at 27, 28 years old, I came in and I ran an organization that was about 420 strong. Wow. It had 3 divisions. We had 120 pieces of vehicles, 420 employees. And, we did everything in the logistics environment. We had 3 divisions. And so, but I wasn't afraid, because I think that part of the development is you learn to sort of feel confident in your own abilities. Mm-hmm. And that comes through time, through failures, right? Things that you fail in. I've had the ability to be able to really kind of study the things that I've done wrong, and really build on that, and to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Can you give an example of maybe one of your failures or one of your darkest times, and you turn that around into success?
Yeah. So one of my biggest ones that I will always take with me, and I try to share my failures with everybody, with all my everybody that's around my life, whether they're employees, whether they're students, whether they're family members. And one of the biggest failures that I had was jumping the gun. And so the one example was I had deployed to Afghanistan. I came back from Afghanistan. I was in the D.C. area. I was stationed at headquarters Marine Corps. I was the staff sec for a 3-star general. So very, very high level position. I honestly don't know how I got that position. I applied for it, but it was a very long shot for me to get it. But I got it as a young officer, as a young captain. And so, wherever the general went, I prepared all his presentations. So I was in a very high level position. So I was able to see the Marine Corps from a different, iceberg, subset. And so he was very, as any general would probably be, he was very disciplined. He was very straightforward. He was very meticulous about what he did. And so one of the things that we had started working up was Iraq had kicked in. And so we had plans in place because initially we knew that there was a certain amount of casualties that were going to take place in the first phase of the war. And so we had instilled a program and a process that if something drastic was to happen, we sort of had to implement the process, sort of like sound the alarm. Mm-hmm. And so there was, I remember this, it was like a Friday afternoon, and there was a staff sergeant that came in running through the doors, and, she was just like, we've taken casualties in the city, I forgot the city in Iraq. We need to stand up the casualty for, we need to sound the alarm, mm-hmm. right? This is the first phase, we're going in, we're taking a lot of casualties. And so I immediately reacted the way I did. I was like, okay, we got to do this. I went into a very big meeting that the general had with the 4-stars and other 4-star generals from other departments. And I called them out and I said, "Sir, can I talk to you for a second?" And he said, Is it important? Because you're taking me out of this important meeting. Right. I said, "Sir, it's very important." So he comes out and he says, "What's going on?" And I said, "Sir, we're taking casualties right now. We need to stand up the react force or the readiness force here in the headquarters so that we can do what we need to do to ensure that we monitor the situation. If we need to round up more force and send them out there, or the casualties, if we are taking casualties, notify the next of kins. I mean, those are all the protocols." And so he said, "Okay, let's do it, right? If you're recommending that, do it." So I said, "We need to do it." So I stood it up, and long story short, there was no casualties. There was one Marine who had fallen off the Humvee, broken his wrist, and it came through the wires, through different, when you tell somebody to say it's another person, right, to say another person.
Telephone kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It came, and that's all it was. Yeah. And I had caused the biggest ruckus, right? And so the general pulled me into the office, and he's like, "What was this? What happened?" He was like, "What happened?" And I said, "Sir, I jumped the gun." He's like, "You didn't look at it. You didn't try to identify, or you didn't get any more information. Like, you just went through your gut feeling. Like, those are things that you need to look at. But how come you didn't investigate? Why didn't you ask for more?" So he just went down the line, right, of things that I should have done. Mm-hmm. It was really a huge issue. Trust me. I created this mass chaos in the entire building where just officers, you saw, colonels. I mean, everybody was scrambling because I alerted. I pressed the alert button. Yeah. That was one of my biggest failures, because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and that was identify the problem. Maybe something similar to you go through, like when you go through your checks and you're with a patient, or in different ways that the processes have to work. So from there on, I don't think that's ever happened to me again, and I teach that too, because there's a sense of intuition, there's a sense of reaction, but you still need to take a step back and follow the process. And I think that was one of my biggest lessons that I've carried throughout my entire career from that point on, when I came out to become a civilian in the shipping industries, areas where I've gotten phone calls in the middle of the night and says, this is what's going on with the ship. And if I hadn't gone through that scenario, I would have probably acted differently. But from that point on, I was very meticulous on making sure that I took a step back and analyzed the situation before I made any decision. So that was one of my biggest learning lessons in my life that I carry with me.
Right. Awesome. So just really investigating, having a very good informed decision.
Correct.
Just confirming the facts before you make those big moves or decisions. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So, my first introduction to you was, about Bella Aviation when you came to AMC to talk about Bella Aviation. But can you tell me a little bit about your company, the drone company, like what services it has? And it could be very broad, but also, can you give me a little bit of synopsis on your vision for it in healthcare or healthcare accessibility using your company or using the technology?
No, absolutely. And I think the basis for the forming the company was really behind when COVID had started, and we were looking on Facebook, and we started seeing a lot of requests from families that were not able to get out of their homes, or they didn't have any vehicles, and they needed necessities. And some of their local shops were closed, so they weren't able to go to, say, the supermarkets because maybe the local mart wasn't open.
Yeah.
And so we started seeing a lot of requests for that. And so we felt that we had to do the right thing. So we went out and we bought the necessities for these different families, and then we had asked them, where can we meet you and hand over the goods. And so that was the beginning of the journey, because when we started going to these different locations, I couldn't understand how we were allowing these families to live in areas that were not road accessible. Some didn't have running water. And so, again, it just kind of put everything back into perspective. And so one is where the light bulb came in, right? Being a logistician, I was thinking, listen, what happens if we do get hit with a typhoon and all the roads are closed?
Right.
How are people going to get supplies?
Yep. And it's not like that never happens, right?
And it's not like it's a real. It's not like a what if. It's when.
Yeah.
Right. It's when is it going to happen? Yeah. So that was the original intent. So we started looking out to see exactly what technology was out there to see. My co-founder, she's big on aviation, and my co-founder is actually the mother of my 6-year-old daughter, which was huge. So she's in the aviation industry, and I was in the logistics industry. So we kind of blended together. We started seeing that drone technology was really taking shape, and this was maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when the onset of COVID. And so the drone technology was really coming about, and we started to see ways to be able to implement that throughout the region. So we created the company. We said, we want to be able to create a network of deliveries to be able to bring goods to areas that don't have the ability to receive goods.
Yeah.
That was easier said than done, obviously, because there's a lot of regulations behind that. And so we started pivoting behind the drone industry. And so we started looking at things that were creating revenue. So we got into the drone light shows, right? That was making revenue for us as well. So they wanted a show for Liberation, Christmas, New Year's Eve, right. Special events. Yeah. And so that was doing well.
Yeah, that was a really awesome. I thought that was outsourced from the States. I didn't realize that was you.
Yeah, no. So, so the first one was, first one we brought in actually, they were in Americans Got Talent. A very
those
good
guys.
Okay. We actually brought them in, and they loved being out here. They fell in love with Guam, but we knew that was an area that we had to. So we invested in. We got our own shows, and we received the training, and then from there, it really took on another life, because the innovation behind the utilization of drones is like endless. Yeah. And so now we're cleaning buildings using drones.
Yeah. So right now, most people, I believe in their mind is, they think about more in entertainment or use in media, right?
Right.
Maybe use in real estate photography, showing the different buildings and things like that. But I think a lot of people don't realize just how vast of an industry this can permeate into, the drone technology. So, yeah, can you elaborate on any? Yeah, more. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah,
so, there's a lot of great things happening. So but just to kind of finish the point on the delivery side. So we're circling back, because so then it took a different shape, and then we realized that when we started going out to Pohnpei, Chuuk, Palau, that's a different animal as well, right? Because, like, for example, they only have one post office in Palau. And then you look at all the outlying islands that they have, and in Pohnpei or in the FSM, they have islands that only have 100 people, 200 people. So it makes you think, like, how are we able to service them from from a healthcare perspective, like how can we diagnose them if they're, if they have diabetes? I mean, they don't have that readily available, that access. So how do we develop those programs? So our mindset from, what's making revenue has really shifted into more of how do we create a program that allows these people to be able to have the access to goods, the necessities that they need to be able to survive, the healthcare that they need, the telemedicine that we could potentially create with these drones. So that has taken a completely different shape. But on the innovation of the drones, I mean, so we're using drones to clean buildings. We're using drones to be able to educate students on the STEM, on the engineering, everything that takes into account to making these drones. And then one of the largest applications that we're about to embark on right now is, Bella and EcoFly, which Dong and Andy, we've actually come together because we've seen that the synergies that we both have are beyond our grasp right now. But if we come together, we're going to be able to achieve a lot of things that we want to be able to get done. So on the EcoFly side, which they mainly cater towards the construction side, we're working on a project, and I think the easiest way to say it is we're working on something that's Google Maps on steroids. And so basically we want to be able to map and digitize or get a digital twin of Guam. And that is going to open up a lot of avenues for, on the construction side, on the development side, on the permitting side, on the surveying side. I mean, there's so many applications that are going to open up from this development. So that's like the biggest one we have on the radar right now, because it's really going to fundamentally change the way people access this GIS data.
Yeah, I'm excited about this application process and where it goes, and if you combine that with AI and so many things that can come about that. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that. And one thing I guess I wanted to also open it up for the viewers is I think now is the time to kind of get your foot in this technology because it's going to permeate almost every industry. So you have a program on Guam to kind of get certain certifications to at least that starter part, right? Because these are some basic things you should need before you even have a business that delves into this. Could you tell me about like the courses or EcoFly and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So under EcoFly, we actually have a full-blown curriculum that allows us to train anybody that wants to get into the Part 107. So legally, if you want to be able to fly your drones commercially, and what that means is if you're a realtor and you want to take pictures, put them on the website, or if you do anything for monetary means, you have to have a license. And the license looks identical to the license that a manned pilot has. And it falls under the FAA Part 107. That's what they call it for the SUAS type license. And so we have different ways to be able to do it. You can either do it online, or we have workshops that we do monthly. The workshops on the monthly level, we've gotten it down to a good 3 to 4 days to get you really prepped up, get you ready to take the exam. But the beauty about the in-person is the fact that we also get some practical experience within that training as well. So, it's unfortunate that it's almost like getting your license but never driving a car.
Yeah.
And so, we've seen some pilots that do have their license but have never flown a drone before, Part 107 pilots. And so we don't want that, because we're a very small community, and we reach out for other pilots to come and help us on the different projects that we have. And so, it's not just get your license, pass and forget it. We want to be able to train you in a way to do it correctly, safely. Safety is always number one with these drones, especially when we're so close to the airport, we're so close to bases. There's closer to the beach, there's always people around, and so safety is always paramount. So, but that's the number one rule. If you're gonna use the drones for commercial purposes, you have to have a Part 107. We have the football curriculum that we want to be able to implement into high schools as well, because minimum age is 16 to get your license. So you could potentially be flying on the man side, it's 16 as well. So you could be flying drones or flying a plane probably faster than getting your driver's license, vehicle license. So those are the programs that we have right now, and we feel very strongly that the community is only going to continue to grow, but the regulations are almost going to get harder as well as more restrictions come into play.
Yeah.
And so, right now is the perfect time to kind of go through these programs.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to, just spark people's interest and, say if you get these licenses, the pilot licenses, what kind of job descriptions or job roles do you think you can get into once you start this process? What are the potential careers in this?
Oh, there's so many endless careers. So for example, from a mapping perspective, right, from a construction perspective, there's a lot of construction companies now that are looking for the younger generations that are coming out with this Part 107 to join their team, because they need to be able to, do mapping, videography, take pictures of their project, do time lapse, and all that can be done with drones. LiDAR, which is next level construction type of technology using LiDAR, right? And so on the construction side, we see a huge demand there for drone pilots and drone technology, and it's only going to continue to grow. On the realtor side, that's another aspect that we've started to see on the videography side. So if you see a lot of films right now in the theaters, if you still go to the theater, or on Netflix, or on Hulu, or on Prime, some of these action shots that you see happening are actually done by drone. So when the camera looks like they go underneath the vehicle, or they jump from a cliff and you just do a huge dive, that's using a drone, what they call a first-person view. They're super fast drones, but they're very, what they call acrobatic. So they can make flips, go underneath vehicles. It's amazing. So, so you have construction, you have videography, you have engineering. And so, let's not even discuss the defense aspect of the drones as well, right? Because it's been already said, even the new Secretary of Defense has said that drones is going to be the way we fight wars in the future. And that's true. The development of these drones are just unbelievable, just unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely less casualties potentially on who are using the drones, right? And probably costs a lot less than doing a fighter pilot, right? So fighter jet. So
and making smarter decisions, quicker and smarter decisions, because you're going to be able to see the lay of the land. Because some of the way they're training right now is even with their vehicle convoys, the Marines are using them quite a bit as well. And when they're doing the convoys, they launch their drones, and the drones are following them. And when you have eyes on from the sky, the land mass that you're able to visually see in the air versus being on the ground is completely like 10 times larger. So the Marines, as they're going to convoys, they're seeing, way ahead, 300 feet, 400 feet, a mile away ahead of them.
So these days, from the best of the best, how fast can a drone fly, and what would be like the battery life?
That's a good question. I think that every time we talk about batteries, I would say that if you can invent a durable, long-lasting battery, you would be a trillionaire, a billionaire. Okay, because that's one of the biggest issues that we confront on the drones is if it's battery powered, right? So the more power it uses, the more it sucks the energy, and so the smaller ones can fly. We've seen them go as fast as 80 miles per hour, 90 miles per hour. They're fast. They are super fast. But the battery life is a little bit less, right? And so it's a trade-off. Smaller battery, less endurance. Larger battery, less payload. So, you have a larger drone with larger batteries, and, you want to be able to carry heavier things. That reduces it because the batteries are so heavy. So there's a little bit of a trade-off. So if anybody can find that sweet spot or an alternative way to be able to power the drones, obviously you can power them with fuel. They're looking at hydro cells. There is a drone flying around I don't know, I would say space right now that is solar powered. The scientists are using that, and so multiple applications. But you're right. The battery is really the biggest question mark, because the smaller the battery you have, the less endurance you have. The bigger that you have, the less payload you're going to be able to carry.
Yeah. Then one of the most exciting things you kind of woke me up to is on the consumer side, the application of drones in terms of even the infrastructure of buildings are going to change because of this technology. You were telling about how, in skyscrapers, like if you are in an emergency or you're sick or you're disabled, it's hard to go down the elevator or down the stairs. So now they're making windows or almost capsule exits where drones can kind of pop out or pick you up, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so that can carry up to maybe 1 to 2 people. Is that correct? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the ones that we've seen, the prototypes have been one person,
Yeah.
The sky taxis. And so if you look at the cities that are really moving forward with innovation, they're the design of the new apartment buildings, because a lot of these areas are very small, very tight, so they can't build out anymore. So they're building up.
Yeah.
And so cities or if you look at like Singapore, for example, they're building up these skyscrapers. And their designs, you're starting to see these new designs with drone ports. And so in their mind is one day they're going to have these drone taxis that, I know it's almost like the best way to visualize is probably the Jetsons. You get into your pod and you fly around, and then you get into your apartment, into your drone pod, floor 89, and you get off.
Yeah.
And so it's not it's I would say within the next 2 to 3 years, we should have the first set of drone pods set and ready to go.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about that for traffic too.
Oh no, absolutely.
Because it's I think it's unreasonable. Like Elon Musk is building underground tunnels, which that's a cool, nice way to travel and avoid traffic and make things secure to a certain degree, somewhat earthquake proof. But then I think that's going to be just not feasible for many places, right? I don't think we can drill a tunnel. In
Yeah,
Guam.
that'd be tough. Yeah.
So I think the fastest way would be adoption of the drone technology or capsule flights.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that also applied into, can we make ambulances out of that? Because the last time I heard, we were down to like 5 ambulances.
Right.
So
right.
That's kind of scary, right? So having more of that technology would be awesome, and to get to wherever the hospital is.
Right.
If it's in Manila or Talofofo, you can get down to it in probably 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, even less. I mean, and that's that's the way that we should be thinking.
Yeah.
And sometimes people look at me sort of weird every time I get presentations, because it seems so far off, but it's really not. And but when you take the technical element out of what I'm trying to present, and you see the human aspect of it, then it really makes sense. Because when we start talking about ambulances, we're talking about saving lives. Mm-hmm. And so whatever it is, whether it's a tunnel, whether it's a boat, whether it's a drone, we want to be able to create these means to be able to save lives. And so, don't look at it as, oh, this is far-fetched. Whatever it is, we need to sort of peel that, put that to the side and really get to the foundation of what we're trying to do. And that should be applied to everything. So I will tell you, maybe it's with age, but my focus has really turned into that, taking the money aspect out of it, taking the technical aspect, and really focusing on what does it really mean? Like, why are we doing all this? Mm-hmm. And it's really about us. It's about our people. How do we save our people in the different ways that we're trying to come up with? So that's another lesson, a big lesson that I learned back in the day was my first startup was a company called Shipsus. And Shipsus, and it's still there. It's still shelved. I shelved it, but Shipsus was going to be the Expedia for transportation. So if you're going to ship some, you may or may not know how to ship, right? I mean,
The best I've done is use like CTSI.
Yeah.
Ship it to California, around the LA area, and then
Right.
freight to Guam. Yeah.
Right. And you probably, Googled, how to, who are the companies here and so forth. But nowadays you book your own airline tickets, right? You go on Expedia, or you go on Orbitz, or you go on booking.com, and you're the travel agent. So my idea in 2012 was the same. Like, why couldn't we have a Expedia for the transportation, for the folks that are not in the industry? Because the ones that really know how to ship are the ones that know who the companies are, who to call. And so I set out in this journey for about a year. I quit my job, and because that's what you did. Because I lived in San Francisco, and if you went to any cafe, any coffee shop, you met up with other folks that were doing the same thing, and everybody had their headphones on, and they were coding and coming up with this brilliant idea. Went to so many pitches. Went to a pitch. Went to some forums where the founder of Twitter gave a presentation just as they were starting.
Yeah.
He really gave us an amazing discussion about, the prototype doesn't have to be perfect. As long as people understand exactly what you're trying to create, that will be enough for you to be able to go out and get funding and create the bigger picture. And so, because everybody's so in tune with trying to make it perfect, so it's nice and shiny, and you can put it in front of investors, and you think they're going to give you money, and it doesn't always work that way. Yeah. Another company that kind of lost on was Bitcoin. So Bitcoin gave a presentation of the fundamentals of what it represented, and I really truly believe, I just didn't want to spend $100 on one Bitcoin at that point, right? $100 versus what it's now. So, but that was, so I went on that journey, and we were trying to raise about $4.5 million at that point, and we were just pitching to angel investors, VCs, and went in that world. But the notion of why I was doing it was the thing that I will never ever do again, and it was because I thought that I had $1 billion idea. I was gonna be rich. Yeah. This is how I was gonna be a billionaire with this golden idea, and it didn't pan out. I almost went broke. And so my run rate was about 18 months. I was up to about 13 months. Then I started looking at my cash flow, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to pay for my vehicles, my house, for anything. I'm gonna be living with this golden idea that I was gonna be a billionaire. And so that was another huge learning experience for me, because one of the things that I always said, I was never going to do something like that for a money-based idea. And so if you look at the things that we're doing now, it's really to be able to, it's about the community, it's about the people. How do we act during disaster? Do we have the programs in place for disaster? Food source, those are the things that really matter. And that's why I was saying, I don't know if it's age, but the focus in the shift has really changed. And I think that the ability to be able to create programs for people to have the ease and the economic means to be able to get data they need to be able to purchase their homes, or to do their surveys, or to do anything, deliveries using drones. I mean, ambulances one day. I mean, so all that, when you take the technical part out and you really look at the human aspect, I want it to be good, doing good.
Yeah. So I want to shift a little bit more towards leadership. I know you teach entrepreneurship, business management, logistics at EOG, and I was wondering, what would you define, or what would you say are characteristics of a great leader and being in a leadership position?
So, I think one of the biggest characteristics that I would say sets a lot of leaders apart are the ones that truly give you the ability to listen. And I think that is one of the things that I try to practice as well, because one of the things that I try to promote is the fact that we should never, ever think that we know it all. And so when I have seen leaders take in consideration the team's decision information, right? Sometimes leaders have to make decisions based on gut instinct, right? Because they need to. But that comes with practice. That comes through experience.
Right.
That comes through experience. But there's also a point where there's levels when you're trying to incorporate and get the buy-in from the team. And so when you listen to the team and you incorporate their ideas, you could technically formulate a different way to come up with a solution. So one of the things that I've seen is a lot of leaders will say, we need to go from B to C. Okay? This is the part that we need to figure out. Because I can tell you to go to B to C, like, this is the way you're going to do it. But what I have seen is that when you incorporate the team aspect of being able to be a leader, you may take a couple of zigzags along the way, but you'll get to see. And the what you just formed is sort of a culture of being able to come together under one sort of direction. And so that's what I've seen very, very powerful leaders do that. And when you look at some of the leaders, you question, you're like, how did this person get 1 million, 100 million people to vote for him or to follow him in this journey?
Right.
And it's that. I've seen that when you create that aspect of being able to listen to your people, I think it goes a really long way. And so I try to implement that in a lot of the things that I do is I will give you the mission. The mission is to get to C. Okay? How do we get to C? And sometimes they'll come up with ways to be able to get to C that I didn't even think about. And so for me, a good leader is one that really, truly listens to his team.
Okay. Yeah, that's very great advice because, I think, at least on my side, I've always envisioned, and some of that's kind of how you see things in Hollywood or media, right? The typical leaders, the gregarious, very loud, sometimes almost asshole-like, right? Very strong alpha kind of presentation, and just very commanding, right? That kind of personality. So I was wondered, because I would say, I don't believe that one person or you had that characteristic, you're an introvert. I think everyone has a spectrum. Like for me, I'd say I'm more on the side of probably a little bit more quiet, more reserved, a little bit more shy. Sometimes I might change my personality depending on the situation, but overall I'm more of a mellow guy. But, what would your advice be to me to kind of my personality type? How can I be a more effective leader despite the way I am?
Consistency. If you're consistent in the way that you are, because then you start developing a sense of trust. And so you don't have to say it in the loudest way, or you don't have to be pounding your chest so that people can say that, okay, this is the guy that I need to listen to. But consistency in how you are and the way you are and the way that you give direction is very important. So whether you say it out loud, pounding your chest, or very soft in a very directive way, it's gonna be very powerful and very meaningful. And so one of the things that I've seen throughout my career in the military is that I've had both. I've seen, I think most folks that were in the Marines or have studied some of the major leaders in the Afghanistan-Iraqi war know General Mattis. He was the Secretary of Defense for the first term under President Trump. I had the honor and the privilege to serve under General Mattis under what we call Task Force 58. And when he was not the way he spoke to you was so very level-headed. And it was more straight to the point. Like you wanted to listen to him and not miss a word, not miss a beat. On the flip side, I had another leader who would get up on top of the Humvee and would just like rally it behind, like, we're going to go into battle, we're going to kill, and it was almost like you're getting ready to like the Braveheart, right? We're lining up and they're playing the bagpipes and we're stomping on the ground. We can't wait to get into war. And so, both can be effective. But one of the things that I try to teach is that you have to develop your own style. Yeah. And so in the beginning of class, that's the first thing that I ask. What do you think your style is? What is your style? Let me ask you, like, what is your style? What kind of style? So What?
I mean, I think I'd say I want to more lead by example,
Okay.
like through action or my habits, right?
And consistence, right? You want to be consistent in the things that you say and things that you do.
Yeah. But sometimes that's interesting. So I kind of think back, like just as a small ecosystem, right? I was kind of known as the food Nazi in my workplace. It's like,
Okay.
I don't know, for a reason they would always maybe think that I'd be judging them if they're having a donut or something. But I try to hopefully change the work culture where I didn't gravitate towards the processed foods or exercise pretty consistently, and I hope that would permeate to the rest of the staff, right? But didn't quite work out always like that. So I was always saying, is there something I'm missing? Is there anything I could do to help influence the team or the company, all the members to have healthy habits? So yeah, I was always wondering, do I have to be more charismatic? Do I have to be a stronger presence? What is it, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a salesmanship there as well, right? Because there has to be a buy-in from the team, and so unfortunately, there has to be something there that they gravitate towards. So, for you to say, "I want you guys to be healthy living," is one thing.
Yeah.
But if you start showing the examples of why we want to live healthy, or is there a reward to living healthy, and so, but I think that one of the things that I've seen is being able to create that culture is not easy. It can be done, but you really need to be able to get the buy-in from, the people, and it can't just be all at once. Especially when it comes to something like this.
Yeah.
When we have a mission, like for example, with if you study any of the NFL coaches or if you any team sport coaches. Right. You see how, the first year they 0-12, second year 2-12, but the belief is that you're building, right? You're building and shifting a culture of winners, and so even though you lose, you're building on the things that they did well, and then you start to see that the shift in the way they play. Then you start adding the aspect of adding people to the team that complement what they've been learning. And that's when they start sort of completely shifting, because now you have these phenomenal players with players that weren't really that good, but they're developing into great players. And now once you have the sense that once I have the sense that I can lose weight, I'm going to lose weight. But it's the belief that I can lose weight. But you have to be able to create that culture of believers in what you're doing. And I think that salesmanship is a lot to do with it, because you got to be able to make them believe that they can, even though they've tried 50 million different ways. Let's try the 51st way.
Yeah.
Because the 51st way may be the way that you're going to lose weight. And if they lose that first 5-10 pounds, or even 1 pound, you build on that, right? It's not the first year, it's not the second year, but in the fourth year, you're gonna win the Super Bowl.
Okay, thank you. So I kind of wanted to go into more the politics side. So this is interesting for me. Like, I think you check off a lot of the boxes. I think to be a strong candidate, to be governor. I mean, you have a lot of work experiences. You check off a lot of the boxes in the military. You've led a huge company. You've also been an entrepreneur, and you open up your own company and start things from the ground up, and have a lot of other life experiences. You've seen the world, and you worked with many people. But I think one of the arguments that might come up, and I'm sure it's already come up, is you have not had the typical journey of working in the Senate or the typical government position. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, and I think that I get that asked. Well, not asked. They tell me this. Well, you should look into this first before you really make that leap.
Yeah.
And once again, I go back to this 28-year-old kid saying the only way that I'm going to join your organization is if I run it, and because I really truly believed in what I could bring to the team. And so, when I look at the new way of the way the politics are being done, I mean, it's completely shifted.
Yeah,
it's completely shifted. So, I feel that we, in the current state that we are. There needs to be somebody that can come in, not somebody that has been in politics for 30, 40 years, or maybe, but I feel right now that in the position that we are right now, we need somebody to be able to come in and sort of right the ship in a way from financially, economically, try to build that culture of being able to say, you know what, we can do it, because. One of the biggest things that I always hear is this mass exodus of people leaving the island, and I think about that. I think about why are the folks leaving, and then they start telling you why they're leaving. Right? It's too expensive to live here. The school systems aren't that great. Yeah. I mean, I can't own a home anymore, and so inherently, all those things can be changed, but we have to believe that we can change. And so, I'm not saying that. That it's wrong being a politician. I'm not saying that at all. Yeah. All I'm saying is that what I feel that I can bring to the table is what's needed right now to bring back the ship a little bit, because we're losing too many people to the mainland, to other countries. I've heard folks moving to Europe, to Italy. All these countries are attracting people to come back. They're giving them land for $10,000, $5,000. So. I feel very strongly, even though I wasn't, and I steal this line from Governor Green from Hawaii. And, one of the things that I say is that, don't look at me as not being born here on Guam. Look at me as where I'm going to die. And that's how I feel about the island, about the people, about everything that we're doing here. And one of the things that I try to tell people that want to listen to me is, have you ever felt the deja vu? Have you ever had deja vu, like you've been here before?
Yeah.
So, I've had the opportunity to travel around the world. And I've lived in many places. I've lived in Puerto Rico. I've lived, many places, Washington, North Carolina, New York, San Francisco, Hawaii for a little bit. I've traveled everywhere. When I first, I've been coming to Guam since 2009, 2010, but the first time that I set foot here, it was deja vu. I felt like I've been here before. I'm not. I know that's going to sound weird. I know that sound crazy, and so I even took the time to do a little research, because I was like, did my family, Spaniard family, did they pass through here, or? Yeah. But it was a little bit of the deja vu, and it was the first time that I will tell you that I really truly felt that I was home, and then beyond that, God was able to bless me with my daughter, and at the age of 42, I pretty much had given up. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's not in my cards. Maybe God wants me to do something else, be in a supporting role, and so forth. And so, to me, Guam represents more than people can ever imagine. Ever imagine. It's home. It's where I want my daughter to be and grow up. And it's where my last resting place is going to be. But I can't sit on the sidelines and just watch this without doing something. And so people were saying, well, that's a little bit of a jump. In order for me to come into the table, I need to run the business. And so that's my perception. That's inherently, that's what I feel that needs to happen right now. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to change anything up, but I just feel like what I can bring to the table is what we need right now to be able to, write the things up. And again, I'm not saying that the politicians are wrong. All I'm saying is that when we start looking at the people exiting the island and you start asking them why, these are the things that we should be fixing.
Yeah. So let's get into what are those things, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you wanted to really focus on or have an impact in retaining the people of Guam and making it the best place to live, right? What would be, I guess, some of the few points or I guess things your platform or what you're really interested in helping Guam?
Yeah, I mean, they're fundamentals of what just as people who love the island should have the ability to have. So what is that? I mean, the ability to afford food, healthy food, is number one. So, oh well, we bring a lot of imports, and the shipping costs a lot. Well, I have a plan to be able to reduce those things because when you look at it, everybody kind of throws out these words with it's a shipping cost, but it's beyond that. I study this. It's the supply chain. It's not just the ships. It's not just the trucking. It's not just the warehouse. It's the power. I mean, it all comes down to one boiling point. When you look at one thing that is imported from the mainland, for example, and you follow it all the way to the point that it gets onto the rack before you pick it in and buy it, that is a costing model that we can look at. And so when you start looking at different ways to be able to reduce the cost, then you say, oh, why is this so much? Or why is this so much? And so the cost of living, we need to be able to bring it to a point where people can live well, the quality of life. So the cost of food, right? Inherently, we should have good, healthy food. We should have a great quality of life. What does that mean? Well, right now, if you look at what people are making, right, and they're not having, they're deciding 1 month whether they're going to pay the power or they're going to buy food. That's not a quality of life. Healthcare, right? I mean, the ability to be able to reform the system so that, we're not only practicing ways to promote, and I'm sorry on the, if I touch on anything that may be sensitive, but I feel like, there's other means to be able to treat diabetes, for example. We don't have to put everybody on dialysis. Yeah. We can reverse those with food sources if we had them. Yeah. And so why are we not looking at that? And then that's when the other parts start happening because you'll get the argument that we don't have good, we're not growing anything here, right? Well, why not? Why are we not growing? Why are we having small farms in every single school, teaching our kids to be able to farm at a young age? Because I will tell you, and this is where a little bit of the technology comes in with drones, farming with drones is pretty cool. Yeah. The technology's there. Yeah. And that's going to make things a lot more efficient. And you can even, I've seen even indoor farms managed by drone technology. Right. So hydroponics systems. Right? I mean, is there ways to do it? Absolutely. So the cost of goods, the cost of living, the healthcare, all these things are inherent to people right now. If you look at it, education. And so I feel that if you look at what I would bring to the table, those are the things that really matter to me. And I have nothing to gain other than I want to be able to do good for the island. Yeah. And I'm right there with you because it's said that 90% of the healthcare spending is on chronic disease, and much of those diseases can be preventable, with just lifestyle, with just healthy food and exercise. And that sounds pretty boring, but it's the fact. Like a lot of that could be reversed, and the healthcare spending will come down. What does that mean? Is also our premiums, insurance premiums will also go down if our healthcare spending is down, and we're not using all this, everyone on dialysis or everyone having different procedures done just to keep them alive because of this, just because of one single thing like diabetes. So I think I'm excited if you're able to help foster in technologies for deliveries or even
sustainable foods grown, because we're having also food deserts, right? Even on Guam, as much as it only takes 5 miles to go to Payless, people don't have cars and they're going to the local grocery store and
Yes.
look what's in the grocery stores, right? It's 99% processed foods, right?
Correct.
So if there's local farms or be able to deliver, and I think there has to be a medium where we shift a little bit to be sustainable, have some homegrown water, homegrown food. So if a disaster strikes, we still have food, but also there must be a balance where even the homegrown food at some point will be equivalent in cost to what we ship in. I think, and I'm hoping for that. So I think technology will help to decrease those costs. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you have to also look at is, if you talk to some of the farmers here, it's that's an industry that's really hurting right now. I just put out just a quick video. I was just thinking about them the other day, and because of the fact that the way that I put it is sometimes the farmers are living on hope. Mm-hmm. And for example, one week the hotel industry will purchase hundreds of pounds of banana, and then they're like, wow, we're off to a great start this month. So then they'll cut and get ready to ship more to the hotels, and they say, hey, we don't need any more. Mm. And so then they have to go and go up to some of the different areas, different flea markets to sell the bananas. Yeah. And so if they don't have a good day, they have to do some waste. That's a lot of waste. Yeah, yeah. And so the process for them to be able to harvest, to cut, and to really deliver where it's needed is also something that we really need to help them with. And technology, like for example, there's something that I'm working on behind the scenes right now to be able to help them to be able to understand exactly. It's basically pre-order the demand, right? So that way the farmers understand exactly when to cut, how much to cut, and when to cut, and not just hope that if they cut it and they sell it, they'll get money off of it. So there has to be a process. But when you look at the entire health, when you look at our food source here locally, we don't see any campaigns against healthy living, healthy food, support our farmers. Yeah. We don't see any campaigns. We don't see any campaigns for kids to eat healthy. And every school should have a farming. They should learn how to cultivate. Every single school here should have a cultivating. There's no reason. I mean, we live in a tropical. I mean, it's beautiful, the weather and everything else. Like, there's no reason why we should not have that. And so when you look at other means, we're like, well, they say that we should eat a lot of strawberries and blueberries and we can't afford them. No, but if you look at the makeup of the strawberries and blueberries, you could probably get the same type of healthy fruit. The nutrients from other fruits that we do have, that we can go out. Yeah, the papayas maybe have the same nutrients. So, yes, don't get the strawberries and blueberries. Go out and get the papayas that we can get for free, or the coconuts. And so I think, but that inherently has to come with education, so that we're not sort of like robotic and say, okay, the supermarket doesn't have blueberries, or the blueberries per box is $10 and I can't afford it. And so I can only buy rice and bread. That will get me to $8. But it's all a shift. It's all again, I love sports. And it really has to be a mindset shift. Culturally, we have to be able to change the tide so that people understand that we can do it. That is if there's anything, I don't even have to get elected, but if we can just change the tide so that people can feel the sense of, I can do it. I can lose that 1 pound. I can reverse my diabetics. Like, I don't need to depend on insulin. I've heard of cases where people have been insulin for years, and then they fought it, and they're off it. Mm-hmm. A statistic that I heard recently is that 45% of our island is diabetic, which is huge, 45%. And so that number is staggering. And to me, I'm also big on data. And we need to make sure that we start sharing data like this so that it's a little bit more in our face and we can really see, what's our obesity with our young, from 5-year-old to 10-year-olds. What is our obesity? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Are we at 60%, 70%? Are we at 10%? But again, I think that those are the things that I want to be able to bring to the table so that the mind shift can happen, because it's the only way that we're going to be able to kind of change the tide is if we all believe that we can.
Yeah. So are there any other, I guess, while we're on the topic, any other healthcare policies that kind of you gravitate towards, or you feel like you want to talk about, or how can we improve our healthcare system on Guam besides maybe the food side? What about on the hospital side, or just overall in the industry in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very I've had the opportunity to do some studies through UOG at GMH, and I will say that we have amazing people working in there. I just don't think that the process that we have is working for us now. We see it, we know it, and whether we want to build a new hospital or not, if we don't change the process, it's just going to be the same thing. And so I strongly believe that if the government's not able to create this process, then we should look towards somebody that can. And so that's really where the public-private partnership really comes in, because it's not just a means to be able to get an outside company to come in and start managing everything, but it's just, being able to put systems in place that would allow us to efficiently perform at levels where we should be. And so when you compare our levels compared to the other hospitals around the mainland, we don't even come close. And so I feel that and there's different ways to do it. We could definitely, even with a public-private partnership, we can put stipulations within the contract, because one of the concerns is like, well, if an outside entity comes in and starts managing the hospital, they have every right to say no. Refuse service. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It's all stipulated in the contract. You can put in the contract and say, if you want this contract, you need to sort of follow these guidelines because the people come first and you're going to serve the people. But it's the other parts that are really inherently lacking the attention that it needs. And maintenance, right, falls into, you could definitely subset that to a different PPP. You can have a maintenance company with their own little contracts managing the entire hospital. And so, that's the way I would look at it. From a healthcare perspective, being able to provide healthcare services to our people needs to, the performance needs to be there. Do we have great people? 100%. We definitely do. Do we have a good working system? We do not. I'm also a firm believer that it's not always about the money until I really, really, truly see that it's not that we do need more money, but somebody has to prove to me that we need more money, because again, if we don't have good tracking systems to be able to understand exactly how we're managing the money, then maybe we're not good at negotiating vendors. Maybe we're not good at negotiating the lowest rate for masks, and maybe that will be triggers a huge cost savings. So those are the things that really need to come into play, and we really need to look at.
Yeah. And I imagine that just kind of popped up to my mind in terms of vendors. I think your background in logistics and really looking at the numbers, I think you could be very effective in improving the procurement of things, because I think that's probably one of the biggest things, especially in the hospital side. Procurement is failing, and surgeons and nurses can't do their job because they don't have the equipment because it hasn't been paid. Right. If that's a little more efficient, then I think the hospital will be running a lot smoother, and they're not putting out fires, and patients aren't suffering. So I think the procurement system across the board, actually across all the departments, is the issue in Gulf Guam, and I think that needs to be fixed. And I think probably your expertise in this area will help.
Yeah. I dig through it all the time. I just had a conversation right now before we came here. And, if you look at our procurement process and if you look at some of the other laws that are in place, they're very protective. And it's a layer of protection after another layer of protection after another. And it's all incident based. So, something happened 20 years ago that said, okay, we need to make sure that nobody, or this doesn't happen again. So we add a Band-Aid, right? Mm-hmm. And then 15 years ago, something else happens. And so we said that can never happen again. So we put another layer of Band-Aid on that. And then, so it seems that we try to protect the system by putting layers of safeguards. But that, to me, is the most inefficient way. And one of the things that I said on the radio yesterday was that, right now, there's a law, or there's a bill in place to put penalties if agencies and departments don't produce the audits in time, mm-hmm. right? And to me, that's the most inefficient way to be able to look at it, because you're not getting to the root of why these budgets aren't being made on time. There has to be something there. And so whenever we look at the procurement process, everybody's like, oh, it's broken. Yeah. But when you start looking at, the regulations, you start seeing these layers of protection. Mm. And so, it goes from, one approving officer to the next approving officer to the AG. I mean, it's probably the longest procurement process. But again, it's layers of protection that have been put in place. So right. I think it's time for us to understand that we have the mechanics and the means to be able to see who's doing what with the technology that we have now. And so before, it was very protective because you had paper shuffle. Like you didn't know who had that paper. Yeah. So you needed to get that stamp.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so, but we kind of never went away from it.
Yeah.
If you want something done, you get this paper and there's 50 million stamps that need to happen. We need to get rid of that. We have ways to be able to combat that. So I feel that just taking a good pragmatic approach to understanding the issues and why these Band-Aids were put in place, it's very important, but it's time to turn the page. We have means to be able to control. We have means to be able to execute procurement that should happen in one press of a button, and we should be able to actuate a purchase.
Yeah. Wow. So anything else that you wanted to put out there? I know, it's still early on the candidacy, and you're going to be talking to the people, listening, kind of hearing the voices to kind of really formulate your plan and how you're going to help the people of Guam. But any other message you wanted to put out there?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is what we've been talking about right now is the fact that we really need to stand up and really look at ourselves and believe that we can do anything. The reason why I teach at UOG is because, to me, every time I finish class and I'm driving home, I'm just super blessed to be around the next generation of leaders, the way they think, the ability of them to be able to put things together is just amazing. And so when we start talking about the workforce, I mean, it's like, we don't have enough people. We need to get more people from the outside. I'm like, listen, every workforce can be developed if they're trained. And let me just tell you, we have very smart people that are going to lead the way for the next generation. When it comes to health, yes, we can. We don't have to depend on medicine to be able to, switch us from being 45% diabetic to maybe get it down to 20. Yeah. But it's the belief that we can. Can we bring technology here, manufacturing? Can we bring back another source of economic development? Absolutely. Those things we can. And I will argue, and I will argue with anybody that tells me that we can't. And so the message that I want to send to the people is the fact that, yes, we can. We can do it. But it's going to take action. And so the one thing that I really pride myself is the fact that when I think it, I immediately take action to be able to see if it's even strong enough to hold what I'm thinking inside my head. And that's the only way that I can really know if it's, if I was making pottery, just making sure that it's going to hold water. I got to make one, put water. Okay, now I can repeat that process again and repeat the process again and again and again and again. And it's practice. Yeah. It's practice. So I think that the notion that, we need to ensure that we believe that we can become, stronger farmers, build an internal sustainable food system here. We can.
Yeah.
We can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a powerful message, and I agree with that sentiment. And I actually get a lot of, I guess, inspiration or hope when I see Guam sports. That's what gives me a lot of inspiration in what I do sometimes. Like when I see all these guys winning medals in jiu-jitsu, or the soccer team beating 1 billion population India, or even like the tennis team beating countries like Mongolia and some huge countries, right? I see that the capacity or the capability of almost the underdog,
Right.
and we come out on top. So I have faith that and really hope and have faith that and belief that we can. It might be the impossible, but that we as a community, we as a society can have better health metrics than our big brother, the United States, the mainland, and comparative to the outer islands, and maybe even match places like Japan. So that's my faith and that's my hope. But sports is my inspiration, and I think right now we just have to speak it in existence and have that belief. So that's the big word I learned from you today. Have that belief.
Yes, belief. We can do it.
Yeah.
That's the belief that we need to have.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. Pleasure.